Now let's focus on social and mental implications. COVID-19 has impacted us all: employees, employers, parents, children, the elderly, those who are in one of those vulnerable groups, and many in the most vulnerable areas continue to suffer in many different ways. To share their knowledge on these areas, we're joined by two experts, Dr. Cheryl Ann Budram, a lecturer and coordinator of the Social Work Program Department of Behavioral Sciences of the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, and Daryl Joseph, president of the Employee Assistance Professionals Association. He's a consulting psychologist. He's director of JOSAL Consulting, and he's also involved with All Stars, which we will not spend too much time on these days, even though, Daryl, you'd like us to spend even more time on it. Good morning to you both. Thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time, because I'm sure there's so much else you could do at this hour of the morning. In your many different capacities, especially as president of the Employee Assistance Professionals Association, by its very definition, suggests helping employees, assisting them in their particular circumstances and so on. What is your perspective, given that we're talking about something that is clearly going to impact on us? It's already done so significantly, and it's going to have a grip on us for some time yet.
Good morning, Fazeer. Good morning, Dr. Budram, and everybody who is out there listening. A pleasure to be here once again. We used to play a game when we were small, and the game had the phrase in it, the catchphrase, apple cart turnover, or I've heard other versions of that same thing. But basically, the analogy is that everything that you knew and everything that the way that you knew it has now been changed. It's now been disrupted. It's now turned into a chaotic situation where there was once order. The impact of COVID-19 is felt from the boardroom all the way down to the washroom. There is nobody within the workplace scenario that has not been impacted by this. And from an employee assistance perspective, where we look at the entire organization from top to bottom, it is imperative that the mental and emotional health of employees at every level in the organization be given serious attention and serious resources to be able to have the resilience to cope with the new normal, as we call it. So this is no longer something that we can dismiss or just look at as something that affecting only a small fringe of the workforce. This is something that impacts everybody.
And before I go back to Dr. Budram, could I challenge you just a bit on that, Daryl? Because can it be said that a CEO or something who making $5 million a year, let's say his salary is cut in half, he is making $2.5 million a year, which is still about 30 times more than the average person might be making. Can you argue that that individual is facing the same consequences that those at the lower rungs of the economic ladder?
A rich CEO who is grieving for his dead daughter or wife ends up in my office or in the office of one of my consultants, the same way that a poor person who is grieving the loss of their wife or their daughter will end up, and they both have the same complaint. They both have the same issue.
I hear you on that. I'm not meaning to trivialize that, but I'm talking about coping with our economic. I take your point about health and wellness and death and so on. There's no difference in that. I didn't mean it that way, but I meant in coping with the challenges of everyday life. Should we be focusing more of our attention and our resources and our counseling towards the most vulnerable economically in that specific regard?
We need to pay attention to everyone, Fazeer, because I hear what you're saying, but the reality is that we don't suffer in silos. So if I am challenged economically, and if my health is challenged, and if my relationship at home, whatever is challenged, there's a net result on the individual, which has a net impact. So even though I take your situation, we do definitely, at least in terms of, okay, let's separate it out. In terms of those who are most economically impacted, definitely, yes, there must be a certain kind of attention and a certain level of attention. But let us not fool ourselves into thinking that, we just have to look after the people who are not making and everybody else will be okay. It does not work like that.
I'm glad you're able to really put it that way. What more can you add if we're talking about assisting the most vulnerable?
Sure. Well, remember, I am speaking from an employer assistance perspective, so I'm
Sure.
looking at at organizations, companies, and so forth.
Sure.
It is imperative that business leaders, managers of businesses, and so forth put priority and attention to the needs of their employees at this time. Now, there are different things that are impacting people all at the same time. We have definitely fear of COVID, fear of the illness and what it can do, but we do have those persons who are fearful for their income, those who may have lost income. And I'm appealing to every business leader, everyone within the business community, please do whatever you can to look after those persons whose pockets are impacted the most first. There's a hierarchy of needs that people have, and one of the most important and urgent and first needs is for food and shelter. You know, if it may sound a bit cliched, but sometimes cliches work, huh? If everybody just has a little bit more compassion, a little bit more empathy, a little bit more understanding, and stop only looking at situations through your own lens, but try to understand what the person next to you is going through and how they may be seeing things, it will do a world of good. There are many of us. Yeah, what? No,
go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead. Go ahead with your contribution.
Thank you. There are many of us who can make sacrifices, and I've had this argument with some of my peers in particular. Whenever a foreign country, for example, is in distress, we love to donate and to go on, drives to send stuff, and that's very good. That's well and good, but sometimes you have to do the same thing for your own as well. And I think that more and more can be done on an individual level and certainly on an organizational levels. And kudos to the organizations that are doing it, because there are some, but definitely more is needed. Once we have those immediate needs taken care of, do not ignore the mental and emotional impact, because you cannot have people come to work and they are, like almost in a zombie kind of state, because they're just so stressed out and so worried that they can't be productive at the end of the day. That is not going to help us get out of the situation that we're in either.
Are you seeing that level of consideration among the employers that you would have consulted with, whether pre-pandemic or in the time of the pandemic, that they are not looking just purely at the bottom line? Profits down, so 5 people out. Profits down, so 10 people out. Are they willing to take into consideration those human realities?
Yeah, well, the ones that work with me, they have to. Otherwise, I won't work with them anymore. Just kidding, just joking. Honestly, no, I'm not seeing it universally applied across the board the way that it should. And it is a very, very serious cause for concern. And we have this peculiar habit in this part of the world of doing this. We're always pointing at somebody, or we're always blaming somebody, and we're always expecting somebody else to take care of things that we should be taking care of ourselves. That is also something that needs to stop. There is more that we can do, and it's a call to whoever is out there listening. Please do everything within your power to look after your neighbor, to look after your employee, to look after people around you at this point in time. It is the only way we are going to get through this thing successfully.
Darrell Joseph, final thoughts from you as to, and I know, Darrell, in that area of primary concern, employee assistance and so on, what is your final message? What would you like to say to the general public, especially to the employers at this time as we conclude?
Quite correct. My call really is to employers to understand that you cannot have a working, functional, productive organization without employees who are healthy. Attend to their needs, find out what you can do, figure out, sit down, brainstorm, research, read, do whatever you have to do. Figure out how best you can assist in the needs of your employees at this time, economic, mental, emotional, and do what needs to be done. It is only by looking after your employees, it's only by looking after ourselves that we are going to get out of this thing successfully. So don't take it for granted, don't overlook it, make it a priority, please.
Daryl Joseph, good to see you once again, even though it's only via Zoom. We appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning, and Dr. Budram as well. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your expertise in our discussion this morning. We really appreciate it.